Have you ever heard truckers talk about things no one else believes? It's not just one or two guys, plenty of drivers swear they've crossed paths with strange apparitions on deserted highways, especially on rainy nights when the fog blends the real with the supernatural. But there's one story in particular that's never left the lips of the old-timers: the legend of the Death Pilgrim. A mysterious woman, wrapped in silence and dread, who appears during storms and leaves behind a trail of crashes, psychological terror, and lives marked by the unexplainable. The legend made its rounds among those who live on the road, but it took on an even darker form through the experience of Ernesto Rojas, a seasoned and skeptical trucker. Ernesto had never paid much mind to ghost storyish, laughed at buddies who talked about curses, creepy puddles, or women standing alone on the highway. For him, that was just exhausted trucker talk. That is until the night he had to stop. Until he felt the invisible weight that crushes those who cross paths with something they were never meant to find. This isn't just a scary story. It's a warning. A deep dive into the thin line between skepticism and fear. What you're about to hear is a tale where the supernatural collides with the ordinary, and where giving someone a ride can be a ticket to something far bigger and far more dangerous than you'd ever imagine. The curse of the road doesn't forgive. And once it catches you, escaping the fate it sets for you is nearly impossible. Maybe you think you've heard something like this before. But trust me, Ernesto Rojas' story will make you look twice before getting behind the wheel at night. Because there are things out there that can't be explained. Only felt. And sometimes felt too late. Ernesto Rojas wasn't just some guy behind the wheel of a truck. He was old school kind of driver who learned to survive on the road before he ever figured out how to live off it. For over 30 years, he'd crossed treacherous mountain passes, blistering desert highways, and curves so tight they felt like traps set by fate itself. Between one delivery and the next, he collected stories, some funny, some tragic, but all filtered through his practical view of life. Ernesto only believed in what he could see, hear, or fix with a wrench. Over time, he stopped being impressed by the tales truckers swapped at roadside diners. Every cup of coffee came with an urban legend: apparitions on empty roads, strange lights in the sky, ghosts vanishing from the rearview mirror. Sure, Ernesto listened. After all, the road is lonely, and small talk helps pass the time. But deep down, he chuckled. To him, it was all just tired minds seeing shadows. Nothing a strong brew and a few hours of sleep couldn't clear up. Still, there were certain stretches of highway he treated with quiet respect. You know how it is. No matter how skeptical you are, you're not stupid. Places where lots of people die deserve silence, he used to say. He didn't believe in curses, but he didn't mess with things he couldn't explain either. Like that tight curve on the BR 163, he'd always make the sign of the cross before passing it. Just habit, he'd say with a grin. But his eyes told another story. Maybe even he wasn't so sure anymore. And so he kept driving, challenging the road, the fatigue, and even logic itself. He was the kind of man whose wrinkles carried stories and whose skin smelled of diesel. His peers looked up to him, and for good reason. Ernesto was known as the man who never got lost until the night he saw her. The woman on the side of the road. After that, everything he'd ever dismissed began knocking on his door. Because the truth is, the road has its own rules. And even with all his years behind the wheel, Ernesto was about to learn that there are some encounters you don't choose. Some wait for the perfect moment. And when they come, they leave marks time can't erase, especially when the supernatural is involved. That night felt like any other. Ernesto was driving along the BR 262, cutting through the pitch-dark landscape as a light rain began to fall. The sound of water hitting the windshield had a hypnotic rhythm, almost soothing. But something felt off. The road, usually busy with headlights and engine noise, was too quiet. No tail lights in the mirror, no voices on the radio, just the storm, the hum of the engine, and the kind of silence that presses against your thoughts. Then he saw her. A female figure, standing completely still on the shoulder of the road, as if she didn't even notice the rain pooling around her feet in dark, mysterious puddles. She just stood there, frozen. At that moment, Ernesto didn't know who or what he was looking at. But something made him hit the brakes. Maybe instinct. Maybe fate. His brain screamed, keep driving, but something about her held him there. Maybe it was her stare. Maybe it was the strange calm she radiated, even in the middle of that brutal storm. He unlocked the door. She got in. Her silence was deafening. She didn't ask for a ride, didn't say where she was going. She just sat in the passenger seat soaking wet, but showing no signs of being cold. Ernesto tried to break the tension the way he always did. Hell of a night for a walk, huh? Nothing. Just the sound of the windshield wipers groaning and the headlights carving a path through darkness. Her presence was uncomfortable in a way he couldn't explain. The air in the cab had grown heavy. And then something even stranger. The radio came back on but only played static. It was like the road had changed. Curves Ernesto knew like the back of his hand now felt longer, unfamiliar, darker. And every time he glanced at the rearview mirror, she either wasn't there or was somewhere else in the truck. His eyes burned, but he didn't dare blink. Cold sweat ran down his back, despite the howling wind outside. It didn't feel like he was giving a ride to a person anymore. It felt like something was riding with him. Watching. Waiting. A kind of psychological terror he had never known before. Then came the smell. A foul, sour stench like rotting flesh coming from the seat beside him. She didn't move. Just stared straight ahead, as if she already knew what lay on the road in front of them. Ernesto gripped the steering wheel tightly. He didn't know what she was, but he knew one thing for sure: he was no longer in control of this ride. And whatever had joined him that night, it was just getting started. From the moment she stepped into the truck, something inside Ernesto began to break. A man who had always trusted his instincts now found himself questioning his own sanity. With every passing mile, her presence grew heavier, more oppressive. She didn't speak. She didn't move. But somehow, she took up more space than seemed possible. The passenger seat looked darker, as if it absorbed what little light remained outside. And the smell, God, the smell kept getting worse. The rearview mirrors, his lifeline to everything behind him, started showing things that didn't make sense. Sometimes she appeared in them, but distorted, her face veiled, her eyes black like bottomless pits. Other times, she simply wasn't there at all, even though he could see her clearly at his side. "I'm losing my mind," he muttered. But the sweat on his palms and the chill crawling up his spine told him this fear was real. Something otherworldly had entered his truck. Then came the noises. Cracks. Whispers. Creaks that seemed to come from inside the dashboard or the cargo area. Ernesto even pulled over once, grabbed his flashlight, and circled the truck. Nothing. Not a sound. When he climbed back into the cab, she was still there, staring out the window, as if nothing had happened. She didn't urge him to hurry. Didn't say a word. She just existed. Like some ancient apparition, patiently waiting for her moment. Ernesto began recalling stories from fellow truckers, ghost sightings on highways, always women, always pale, dressed in outdated clothing, always with that same expression of eternal sadness. "Don't pick up hitchhikers at night," they warned. He had always chalked it up to exaggeration. Now he was feeling the cold touch of fear against his own skin. Every time he blinked, he swore she was closer. Sometimes he thought he could feel her hand, cold and stiff, brush against his arm. And yet, she never moved. That's when he realized the road he knew so well no longer made sense. Signs disappeared. Curves repeated. It was like driving through a loop of horror, where time and direction had broken down. And the woman, or whatever she was, seemed to be enjoying it. The truck didn't belong to him anymore. The road wasn't real. And Ernesto finally understood this wasn't just another trip. It was a one-way journey with no return. The rain just wouldn't stop. The puddles on the road kept multiplying, turning into dark mirrors that twisted his vision and blurred the lines between what was real and what wasn't. Ernesto could no longer tell if he was dreaming or trapped inside a nightmare wearing the face of reality. The truck's headlights cut through the mist, but barely reached more than 10 feet ahead. And then he saw it. A figure. Wrapped in fabric like a shroud, standing right in the middle of the road. It was impossible to tell if it was a man or a woman, but something deep inside him screamed this was death, waiting. Ernesto slammed the brakes, but his reflexes didn't match his fear. The truck skidded. The rear tires lost control over the mysterious puddles, and the vehicle veered off the road like a wild beast with no reins. Everything happened in a blur: the metallic screech of impact, the sound of glass shattering, the world spinning like a roulette wheel with no mercy. And then silence. A silence more terrifying than the crash itself. He blinked. He was alive. But far from whole. He woke up days later in a roadside hospital, bruised head to toe, his skull pounding like a drum. A police officer came in to speak with him. The mood was heavy. "You're not the first, Rojas," he said, flipping open a folder filled with photos and case notes. 7 other drivers have reported the same thing before, crashing a woman on the road, always during a storm. They all claim she was in the truck, but there's never any trace. No fingerprints. No footprints. And that's when it hit Ernesto. This wasn't a hallucination. It was a pattern. A curse, hand-picking victims who made the mistake of stopping. The officer had no explanation, no theory. Why did she appear? Why did she cause these accidents? And the strangest question of all, why did some people survive? Ernesto began to feel the weight of a doubt heavier than any cargo he had ever hauled. But the worst part hadn't come yet. After being discharged from the hospital, he went to the insurance yard to see what was left of his truck. The cab was destroyed, crushed like a tin can. Except for one thing: the passenger seat was completely intact. Not a drop of blood. Not a single sign that anyone had been sitting there. And the most chilling part? The smell of rotting flesh still clung to the fabric. In that moment, Ernesto knew the journey wasn't over. And whatever had followed him hadn't stayed behind. In the days that followed the crash, Ernesto couldn't shake the feeling that something had been left unfinished. So he started digging. He scoured trucker forums, listened to old CB radio recordings, and even joined obscure online groups where stories were shared, always with chilling similarities. And then, like a whisper from beyond the grave, the name surfaced: the Death Pilgrim. Some said she was a woman betrayed and murdered on a highway decades ago. Others believed she was punishment incarnate, a living curse set upon those who dared to break the silent rules of the road. Whatever the origin, the details matched: she always appeared alone, during heavy storms, and always asked for a ride. Once someone let her in, the torment began: calm demeanor, dead silence, that awful smell, and reflections in mirrors that didn't match reality. Ernesto couldn't stop asking himself, why me? Why did I survive when others didn't? Was it random? Was it a warning? Or something worse? Mark? Veteran drivers he spoke with had their own theories. Some believed she cursed anyone who stopped in silent stretches during storms. Others thought she was looking for something or someone and wouldn't stop appearing until she found it. One thing was clear: this wasn't just a scary story. It was an urban legend with too many real-world echoes. What terrified Ernesto most was realizing that no one had ever captured proof. People had tried to film her, record her, or track their route, but nothing ever worked. Cameras failed. Audio vanished. Evidence disappeared like smoke. As if reality itself refused to make room for what couldn't be understood. This wasn't just some campfire tale. It was something alive. Something that fed on fear and thrived in doubt. As the days went by, Ernesto felt something changing in himself. He couldn't sleep. He dreamed of highways he'd never driven. He heard static on Radio 7 when they were unplugged. Slowly, he came to understand that the crash had not been the end, it had been the beginning. The start of something deeper. A bond. A tether. And deep down, a part of him knew the Death Pilgrim doesn't appear by accident. She marks those who carry the right kind of fear. And once you're marked, there's no escaping her. Ernesto tried to move on. He promised himself he'd never go back to the road. He sold the truck, relocated to another town, and tried to live a quiet life far from the engine's roar and the lonely hum of nighttime highways. But some marks don't fade so easily. Soon, strange signs started showing up all around him. Puddles appeared inside his house, even on dry days. The neighbor's radio would fill with static when he walked by. Even the street dogs, once friendly, started barking or running away the moment they saw him. At first, he thought it was just paranoia. Trauma playing tricks on his mind. But the dreams didn't lie. Nearly every night, Ernesto found himself behind the wheel again. Driving along a road that never ended. Rain poured relentlessly. And far ahead, she was always there, the woman on the roadside, frozen, waiting. He tried to drive past her, but the brakes always failed. She always climbed in. And the cycle repeated itself. Over and over. Like something was pulling him back to that exact moment where it all began. During the day, things weren't any better. Lights flickered when he entered a room. He started hearing footsteps behind him even when he was alone. Once, he swore he saw her reflection in a mirror. Just a flash. Twisted, but unmistakable. It didn't matter how hard he tried to ignore it. The haunting never left. It was as if he'd been marked by an invisible curse, sealed by the simple act of unlocking that truck door on a rainy night. Desperate for answers, Ernesto went back to talking with other drivers. He found out some had survived too, but not for long. Many vanished mysteriously. Others lost their minds. One thing was clear: the Death Pilgrim didn't leave loose ends. She was patient, persistent, and above all, inevitable. Once she entered your life, the end might take its time, but it would come. One way or another. And now, Ernesto lives like a man waiting. He knows it's not a matter of if but when. The road still calls to him in dreams, in symbols, in whispers the wind carries through the night. Maybe one day, he'll give in. Grab the keys to any truck. Start the engine. And drive. Because the Death Pilgrim never forgets a face. And once you've been chosen, not even time or reason can stop what's coming. A road might seem like just a path from one place to another, but in truth, it's much more than that. It holds memories, secrets, and sometimes, horrors that refuse to be forgotten. Ernesto Rojas' story reminds us that there are forces beyond our control, And that logic doesn't always explain what we experience. How many signs have you ignored? How many warnings have you brushed off as coincidence? Maybe the death pilgrim is just a metaphor. Or maybe she isn't. But one thing is undeniable: we all carry invisible scars. Fears that walk beside us in silence. Patterns that repeat until we finally face them. And have you stopped to think about your own ghosts? Is there a deserted road in your life you've been avoiding or still need to cross? Ernesto's journey is more than a ghost story. It's a wake-up call. Not just about the supernatural, but about the choices we make without thinking, about the doors we open without knowing what's on the other side. Because sometimes, the scariest thing isn't what's out there, it's what we carry inside, without even realizing. If this story made you feel something, if it stirred your curiosity or gave you that chill down your spine you can't quite explain it, ignore it. Reflect. Pay attention to the details in your own path. And of course, stay tuned for the next stories. There's still so much out there, hidden in plain sight, just waiting to be told or lived. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and share this story with that one person you know has heard a tale like this before but never took it seriously. Who knows? Maybe all they need is one little push to finally believe.